How's it going, everybody? It's the Shirtless Chef coming at you with another episode of How to Cook. So, let's roll the title. So today we are going to try and make a southern twist on a Japanese dish. We're going to make kabocha gratin. But instead of using kabocha squash, we're going to use a yellow squash. Now, this is what we in the South call a summer squash or a yellow squash. One of the rare occasions that I'm going to have to peel one of these. But that's not going to take very long. I'm going to grab a cutting board. This was really the only one that was too tough for me to just leave the skin on. Everything else actually comes out pretty good, minus this one that I've got split. So, I'm going to go ahead and grab this. And you're really just wanting to get rid of the skin. I've got a sharpened, serrated knife. And that's how I'm cutting this. But it's going to take me just a minute or two to get these that I've got soft enough that I think I can get away with it. This one, the skin is very tough, so we really don't want to be eating that. And yes, I'm showing you all the prep because normally you don't get to see the prep work for something like this. I am not going to show you the baking part of this because it's going to be not super long. Maybe about 15 minutes, maybe a little bit shorter than that. To cook. It's not going to take very long. Because all we're really looking to do is get our cheese melted on. And yes, we are going to use cheese in this. Unlike most of my recipes where I try and avoid cheese, I wanted to show that there are also some kinds of cheese that those with lactose intolerance can eat. That we can actually not just live with the consequences, but they don't have consequences. Or at least not major ones. One of the cheeses we're going to use, probably should have run this out. So I'm using frozen squash. It was fresh from the garden and then we froze it. just to get it to preserve it, and I left it in the freezer for too long. But otherwise, how's everyone's day going? And this is why I generally don't show you all the prep. Because it can be downright messy at times. That's where most people don't realize how much prep work is involved in some recipes. For instance, if this were some fancy chef or fancy cooking show, they'd have all this prepped and done beforehand. I, on the other hand, am not a fancy chef. So, and this is not a fancy cooking show that I'm making money off of. This is just me showing you some general ideas on how to cook, and if you wanted to try and make these yourself, show you how easy it is. The seeds are kind of irrelevant. They'll kind of cook down. With this being more of a yellow summer squash, it's not going to be as bad. That's pretty good. I'm going to move this over here. So the sink is over there. That's why I moved it. But let's move on to the rest of our recipe. So like I said, with this being yellow squash, I think we can live with the seeds. Although I may remove it from the set. Yeah, I'm just going to get bold. So, if you all have noticed, I'm not using my standard clear glass dishes. And the reason for that is, with this recipe, there's really not a whole lot that's measured out. And it's not like with our little glass ramekins, we can put like 2 cups of stuff in there. So, I'm just trying to get all the seeds out. Now, for those of you wondering what we're going to do with the seeds, we're not going to waste them. They're going to go into being preserved, and they'll be used for next year. And I'll kind of do something similar with this. Not really going to worry too much about these. Yeah, the skin on this one's soft. Not like that other one that was so hard. So we're just going to take our squash, cut some of the larger pieces down. Hang on. Now all we're just doing is cutting our squash into bite-sized pieces, just so that way it'll kind of cook down a little more. So, anyway, what all have you been up? Have you all been up to? I've been working a good bit, but otherwise everything else has worked out okay. I work over in customer service at a Publix here in Knoxville with some really good bosses, good managers. Boss is not really the right way of stating that because that makes it sound like they really don't do much. Hey, Sean. So, Sean Zabrowski, Sean Cody, Shannon Lashley. If you all are watching this, hello. How's everything going? So, from working retail, you learn a lot. I kind of have gotten to the point now at my age, I believe everyone should have to work at least a couple of weeks of retail. Because, excuse me for saying this, you realize the sheer amount of stupid that exists in the world. Not trying to be mean with that, just a reality check. I'm going to dump out all the liquid that I've got from our frozen squash. So all of that was fresh squash that I put in the freezer, so it would kind of cook down. Things that I'm missing. I've got some garlic, which I'm going to kind of throw a whole clove of garlic. And instead of using an onion, which I thought I had one, but apparently not. We are going to use some oddball cheese in here. I know I generally make things that are lactose intolerant friendly, and what I'm using will be lactose intolerant friendly. I've got too big of a knife to cut that. So we're going to just slice up our garlic. So normally I have a table so you all could see this. Although, that's not really a bad angle for you all to see what I'm doing. We're going to kind of drop our garlic in. Because all this overall is going to cook down. We're not going to use onion just because I don't have an onion. And we've added enough other flavorings that an onion really isn't going to add much one way or the other. We're adding a lot of mushrooms. We're going to add a lot of other things. So the onion is not going to be missed. That is really, aside from the yellow squash and the onion, that's all we're taking liberties on with this recipe. That's it. But we're kind of doing a southern twist for this recipe. So unlike this recipe in the way it says to cook it, I'm starting off with my squash first to kind of let all this cook down. So I've got some shiitakes and some oyster mushrooms. Traditionally, this calls for shimeji mushrooms. But shimeji mushrooms are good sized. They're rather hard to cut. So I've just got some pre-sliced mushrooms that I got from work. And that's what we're going to use. I've got some pecorino and some Asiago cheese that I'm going to add to it. So none of this is really going to take long. Our biggest thing is going to be, I'm not going to show you the bake of it, because I really don't want you all to sit through a whole video just trying to figure out what the hell is going on. Excuse my language, but that's what you'll probably be thinking, is what's going on here. Now the thing about yellow squash is they're super dense and liquid, so it's not like they're going to burn. Just make sure you keep them kind of moving around. Grab a spoon. And get this one. We're going to slowly let this cook down. While we're doing that, I'm going to grab some milk. So I've got some lactose-free milk that we're going to use. I'm lactose intolerant, so it has to be lactose-free. for the most part. We're going to add some macaroni noodles to this. I'm going to kind of clean some of this up. There's not really a whole lot of prep and cleanup for this recipe aside from cutting up the squash. So that was pretty much all I had to prep before all this. And I kind of showed you some of the prep of the squash anyway. My biggest mistake was using frozen squash. So I normally do a stream at 6 on days like this. That may be somewhat delayed. Just because I want to make sure I get dinner done first. I know this looks like a lot of squash, but remember, it's going to cook down, both in the oven and in the pan. So that's good. The whole reason why I'm using this specific squash, I had 2 huge squash that you saw me cutting up. But the reason why I did that is these were 2 squash that we really weren't going to be able to make like boiled squash or something like that out of. But if you bake something like this, it softens up a lot. That's slowly starting to cook down. Not there yet, though. The biggest thing that I want to do with the squash is let it cook down enough that I can bake it and have no problems. Um, Now, for our cheese that we're going to put in this, we've got Asiago and Pecorino Romano. Pecorino is a sheep's milk cheese, and Asiago, the one that I got, was a 6-month aged Italian cheese. So if I have an aged cheese, I think my squash burn is burning. We're starting to get, ironically, some browning on our squash, which is good and bad. It wasn't what I was going for, but it works. We're going to take our squash and kind of put it to the side at this point. Because it's kind of cooked down. See it. That's going to cook down pretty well. So the next thing we're going to do is make our white sauce. So we're going to add probably 4 tablespoons of butter. So I cut the heat down on this pan. It's going to do pretty good. We're going to kind of get our butter melted and build our roux. We're also going to kind of get the brown bits off the pan. Okay, so that looks like it's pretty good. We're going to add flour. See how this starts to cook down. We're going to brown our flour. What we're building is a bechamel sauce. I added too much flour. Kind of like making a gravy. Kind of browned our sauce too much. But this is going to be put in the oven and baked, so it's not going to make that big of a difference. We're going to add this says warm milk. We're not going to try and do that. This is kind of room temperature-ish. We're going to start adding our milk. And this is lactose-free milk. Looks like everything else is doing well. We are going to take and kind of cook down our mushrooms a bit. Looks like our white sauce is pretty much done. And you want it to be about like that. So if I put it on the spoon, it just stays. So that's the thickness and consistency you're looking for. Kind of a gravy. Kind of cooked it a little further than what I wanted it to. But we can always thin it out a little bit. Get some more milk. And remember, we're also going to add cheese to this, so it's we don't want it super thick to begin with. Now we're going to add our mushrooms. These are some shiitakes that I've got. And it may look like, oh, I'm adding a lot of this, but some of this is also in place of things that we can't get. So, king oyster mushrooms are not something I'm going to just randomly find in a grocery store. We're going to put our mushrooms together. That's pretty good. I don't think we'll need all the mushrooms that I got. We are, on the other hand, going to need some of the cheese. So I'm going to put some Asiago cheese and some Romano. Not a lot. Give me 1 second. This is Pecorino Romano, which is a sheep's cheese. If you're lactose intolerant, you can generally eat sheep's milk cheese. So we're going to grate some of this in here. That looks about good. About half a block of Pecorino Romano. Then we're going to add some more cheese with some Asiago. Really good. Now, if you're lactose intolerant, you can actually get away with things like Asiago and the Pecorino Romano because they're harder cheeses. You can also get away with things like Parmesan. That's how much Asiago we're getting. That's going to be a good sauce. I'm going to kind of mix all the cheese in. And the only thing we haven't done so far is add our pasta. And we're going to kind of par cook it. We're going to thin this out a little bit. But it's going to be really good sauce. The only reason why I'm thinning it out is because we're going to turn around and bake this for about 10 minutes or so. I know this has been an hour, but this is also all of our prep, everything. And believe it or not, the recipe originally says an hour and 15 minutes. 45 of that is cook. That's going to be really good. Now, we're going to pour that into our baking dish. The one thing that I forgot to do that I probably should have thought about before is par cooking our pasta. To be honest, we're just going to put some water in this pan. Hang on 1 second. So we're back with one of our last parts of this recipe. We are going to kind of bake this for a couple minutes. And I say bake loosely. That's probably not the best way to do this, but what, cat? Sorry, I just had to add a little bit more water to our pan. I'm kind of doing this in a weird way because ultimately this is all going to get put in our glass baking dish and it's going to be baked for 5 or 10 minutes. So we really only need to par cook our pasta. But overall, I'm happy with what we've managed so far. That bechamel came out really good. And that's our lactose-free bechamel. I'm sorry, folks. I'm going to eat some of the cheese I bought. Since this is actually cheese I can eat. So Asiago has a good sharp bite. Let that cook for 4 minutes. All right, folks, I know this has been a long recipe and a long episode. And you all are probably bored to death. But we're almost done. We're going to take and grate a little more Romano cheese. A little more Asiago cheese. Okay. So all we did here was we added some cheese. Now we're going to stick it under the broiler for a minute. Not long, maybe 4 minutes. But I'll see you back in 4. Okay, we are back. We're just about to pull it back out of the oven. Grab our oven mitts. I stuck it under the broiler for a couple of minutes just to get it a little bit toasted on top. And it did exactly that. 1 second, and you all can see. And there we go. This is dinner tonight. Let me grab a fork and taste this. I want to know how that squash turned out. Mmm. Pasta's creamy. Now for our squash. That's all compliments of that Asiago and Pecorino that we added. It's got a good sharp flavor to it. Go ahead and plate this, and then we're done. I know this took an hour to do, but what you've seen is prep to plate. And that's what I try to advertise with my videos. It's beginning to end, prep to plate. This was just our spoon from earlier. I kept expecting that our yellow squash was going to cook down a bit, and it never really did. So we've got these chunks of yellow squash. But if that was our biggest mishap with this recipe, that's not bad. And it's softened, so it's not like it's horrible. But with the Shirtless Chef, this has been Yellow Squash Gratin.